Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Finkelstein from Beth Sloan Temple Center in Green Valley, and I welcome you here today for what I think is going to be a very interesting talk. First of all, a little bit of housekeeping. I'd ask everybody, including myself, to turn off our cell phones. Restrooms, if you need them, are back in the back part of the sanctuary. The front double doors that you entered are our normal exit doors. Fire extinguishers are located in the main exit doors and in the kitchen. In the case of fire, please calmly exit through the rear door at the same side of the sanctuary as the piano. And move quickly to the clearing outside. If power goes out, emergency lighting should immediately turn on. A defibrillator is located on the wall next to the prayer book cabinet in the back. First aid and blood control kits are clearly marked and located in the drawer of the Bema lectern up here and in the kitchen and library. In the event of a potentially life-threatening situation, you may be directed to move into our sanctuary, which is, in our kitchen at the rear of the sanctuary, which is our safe room. Okay, thank you for your understanding. Now, today we're thrilled to have a gentleman with us whom many of you have met or at least heard from. Pat Schearer is our guest speaker today. For those of you who are fortunate enough to attend our November gala in honor of our 30th anniversary of the temple, you heard him speak about his experiences in Ukraine. Pat's been a very tireless supporter of doing good in the community. He, after retiring from the police force in Peoria, Arizona, he decided to get involved by going over to Ukraine and helping out there, transporting refugees to safety in nearby Slovakia and Poland. He went beyond transportation. He provided essential supplies such as water purifiers. He's driven special forces, soldiers, etc. So I'm sure you're here not to hear me, but to hear Pat. And I know Pat's very flexible about this. He'll have lots of pictures and experiences, but he welcomes questions and comments. And I'd like to turn this over to Pat Schearer.
Peas or corn? And it sounds like a strange question, but last night I was trying to fix myself something to eat, and I looked into the freezer, and I stood there staring and wondering, do I want the peas or the corn? And I probably spent 30 seconds thinking that, staring into the refrigerator or the freezer, and then it hit me, like many things do, is there's people around the world, especially in Ukraine, that I remember, that have questions that they're asking themselves that are a lot tougher than that. You know, do I stay? Do I run? Do I hide? Am I going to eat? That kind of thing. And since my trip to Ukraine, little things like peas or corn will remind me of the things that I experienced over there. So I just kind of wanted to point that out about some of the little trivial things that we think are a dilemma that other people have much worse that they have to think about. I'll start off introducing myself a little bit, tell you a little bit about myself, and if I start getting too long-winded, just wave me on and I'll start. I went to school here in Arizona, down in Mesa, with my brother Dan and 4 other brothers, and graduated, ended up going into the military, in the Army, and became a military policeman. And I was fortunate enough to get stationed in Berlin, Germany, And this was in 1985 when I got there. And so the wall was still up. So I got to experience that Cold War feeling of staring across the border at the so-called enemy, the Russians or the communists. Got some experience there. After I got out of the military, I joined the police department in Peoria, Arizona, and I was there for 26 and a half years. I worked from everything from uniform patrol to our undercover or plainclothes street crimes or narcotics unit. Even taught there for 6 months, probably the toughest assignment I had, dealing with sixth graders. And then I retired, and I wanted to get out of the heat, and I wanted to get out of the city, so I moved up to Schearer, Arizona, which, if you haven't heard of it or haven't been there, it's extremely small and tiny place, but really liked it. But boredom set in, and I started hosting people from all over the world. There was a website called Couchsurfing, and started having young travelers or old travelers, some of them, who would come and stay with me. It's kind of like Airbnb, except it's free. And for a lot of the young people traveling, it's hard to rent a car if you're not 25 or older. Trying to find your way around, especially you come from Europe, we don't have good public transportation. So I would drive them to the Grand Canyon or Sedona or wherever they wanted to go, into Utah. And I got to meet people from all over the world. Many Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, you name it, Israel, people from all over the world, and made some awesome friends and had a lot of people stay with me, some for quite a while. Then I heard all these stories from these young people who had been traveling, and I thought, I want to go out and travel. So I started traveling around, going to different places, and then COVID hit. It kind of shut everybody down. So I watched for the first countries to open during COVID, and Ukraine happened to be the second one that opened for tourists. So I went and got my ticket and touched base with a few people that were on the Couchsurfing site, and I went to Ukraine. And my first landed in Kyiv. Some people call it Kiev, but during the war, it's all of a sudden Kyiv. Kyiv is the Ukrainian way to pronounce it. Kiev is the Russian way, so now it's Kyiv. I landed there, ended up getting like an apartment or Airbnb in Bucha, which is on the outskirts of Kyiv, about hour's drive or so. And I didn't think much of it. Who's ever heard of Bucha? But those of you that have followed the war, I'm sure are familiar with some of the things that came out of Bucha during the beginning of the war. While in Bucha, I made a good friend, her name Anna, and her 11-year-old son. And then I went to Kyiv, did the sightseeing thing, ran into a young guy named Eugene, who told me all the history of Ukraine. I mean, he started from the beginning. This kid was a walking history book, very young guy. We walked around the city for 8 hours. And at the end, he said he was surprised that I made it, because only one other person he'd ever taken on the tour had done that. Well, I assumed everybody made it, and I was just, sweating for no reason. But in the end, he said, hey, I want to tell you something. He said, my biggest fear is that someday that Russia's going to invade us. Now, they had already had the conflicts down in the southeast, in those regions that the Russians claimed they weren't involved in, but it was proven they were helping them out. But I told Eugene, I said, if that happens, I'll come back. I'll come back and fight. I said, I think the United States will stand behind you guys, if they invade a sovereign country like that. And, we ended up going on our way, and and I went on to Odessa, I went to Chernobyl, I went to Lviv in the west, and got to see the country. I loved the country, the people were awesome, thought it was great, and I went back home. And 10 months later, wouldn't you know it, I turned on the news, and there's the Russians coming into Ukraine. And for me, it wasn't even a second thought. I didn't even stop to think. I immediately contacted my friends there to see how they were doing and bought my ticket. Unfortunately, it was canceled after 2 days because they obviously weren't taking flights into Kyiv with the war going on. So I had to rebook it and fly into Poland. They all told me, don't come. My friend Anna and her son, I contacted them, and to this day, they lived in Bucha. I haven't heard anything from them. So I have no idea what happened to them. And for those of you that don't know, they did find mass graves in Bucha, and I don't know what happened. So what I'm going to do is just tell you kind of my experience of when I was in Ukraine. Please feel free, raise your hand or ask questions, you know, if you have anything. But I'm just going to kind of go through my experience of how it went and some of the people that I met there and the interesting things that I saw and experienced. When I first got there, or when I was on my way there, I had been in the military, so not thinking about, you know, my age and physical, you know, everything that way. I thought, I'm going to go over there and fight. I imagined myself standing toe-to-toe with the Ukrainians and pushing the Russians back into Russia, and we would be done with it and everybody would be happy. I was first told that by the time my plane landed in Poland, the war would be over. Everybody said, war's going to be over in 3 days, a week max. But I knew from my experience, the 2 months I spent over there with the Ukrainian people, that there was no way that those people were going to give up. No way they were going to just walk away and let somebody take over their country. So I continued on my way, and obviously, I mean, today it's been 2 years, 334 days since the full-scale invasion. So the 3 day, you know, or week at the most is long gone. When I landed in Poland, the strangest thing, a friend of mine from the couch surfing had heard that I was coming to Poland to go to Ukraine, and she was related to a border patrol person from Poland. He and his partner met me at the airport, walked me all through security and everything, got me a hotel room, told me how to rent a car and everything. And I just thought it was so amazing that there's reasons why you meet people in your life, you know, and why certain things happen. And so they treated me real good. I took the car then, went down to the border, and was turned around because you can't take a car from Europe, or at least from Poland, into Ukraine without special paperwork, not a rental car anyways. You could any other car, but since I was renting it, the rental companies won't allow it. So I had to park it. I parked it at a graveyard. I put all my gear on, and I marched to the gate, and it should have been a red flag that there were millions, literally millions of people coming through the gate, and I was the only one going through the other gate. And it was pretty tough. I wanted to go in there and find out, you know, okay, let's see what I need to do. And so I marched in there. There wasn't even a guard in there. That's how many people were going in, none. So I'm stuck between the doors. Finally, somebody comes over, looks at me strange, and I asked a few questions, and then I was going to go back, get the rest of my stuff. And In this interim, I met up with a couple guys from different countries, one from Scotland, I think one from Poland, and these guys were young guys that were actually going to go over there and fight. So we talked and exchanged information and such, and those two went in, and I went back to get my stuff. Question?
Pat, I'm trying to picture you. You said you put your gear on. What did you look like at this
A lot like I do now, except it wasn't a Ukrainian emblem. I kind of like I do now, except I had a backpack with a whole bunch of stuff in it that I was taking just in case.
Were you armed?
No, I wasn't armed, no.
Okay.
No, I had sent paperwork into, because in the beginning days, Ukraine, or the president, Zelensky, had put out a request for anybody, prior military or police, that wanted to help Ukraine, please come. And it was, you know, in the beginning of any conflict or something like that, everything's just chaos. So nobody really knows what the rules are, what, you know, what's going to happen. So I didn't want to, I sent in my notice that, hey, I'm going to come. Didn't get anything back right away. Didn't matter. I already had my plane ticket, and I just went. So asking around, you know, what do you do? Where do you show up? You know, what do I didn't care, and I don't know why. I think if I would have stopped to care, probably would have went, you know, but I just did it. So when I went back out to get the rest of my stuff, realizing I couldn't take my car across, I see, again, and you'll see in some of the pictures, I didn't take a lot of pictures in the beginning because you just don't know how people are feeling. I mean, this is the worst time of their life, and I don't like, you know, I'm not like a reporter, you know, that just put the camera in people's faces. But I did manage to get some pictures. However, a lot of the pictures from my first time over there were deleted by soldiers or the police that I had run-ins with on different occasions. And they will go through your phone and they deleted any pictures. The rules were no pictures, not specifically nothing of any soldiers, any government buildings, any targets, and really targets could be, you know, even an antenna. So I was probably confronted 4 or 5 times where my phone was taken, and it was only twice that things were deleted. Later, I learned how to hide some of the pictures. So there's all these people out here in Poland, and I noticed something right away, that 90% of them, or 95%, were women or children. There weren't many adult males. I found out then that adult males were not allowed to leave the country if they were between the ages of 18 and 60, because they were all subject to being called up as, you know, as to defend, you know, the country. So everybody just looked kind of bewildered. There were a couple tents out there of like volunteer groups, but mostly they were handing out coffee, or some of them had some clothes they were giving out. But there really wasn't anybody else. And from that point where they crossed the border to get to even just this train station was a 30-minute drive. So everybody was just kind of lost out there and just kind of milling about. And I'm sure there were some things being done, but I got there on March 2nd, so it was only 6 days after the war started. So it was really, you know, in the very beginning stages. So I come across a mother who was sitting with her children around her, and for some reason it just reminded me of my mother raising 6 boys. And I tried to ask what was wrong. She didn't speak good English, but one of her children did speak some English. And she was telling me that they didn't know where to go. They did have a relative in Germany. They wanted to go to the train station, but you know, it was all kind of broken. And I just felt so bad for them. I said, you know, come on, follow me, I'll take you. So they all followed me, and got into, I parked my car at the graveyard. I'm surprised it didn't scare them away. But, so we get into my car at the graveyard, and I drive them to the train station. I find out that they do have a little bit of money, but they don't have any Polish money, and the mother has never been outside of the country, and which was true with probably 90% of the Ukrainians that I dealt with. They have never been outside of their country. So even knowing that there was other money, some of them didn't even know that. So, so I tried to give the mother money. The Ukrainians are very proud people. If you give them something, they basically want to give you something in return, or they will refuse it. But so she wouldn't take the money. I didn't know their traditions or anything, so I made sure I gave it to the little girl, and then drove off, you know, before the mom could say no. But so I gave them some Polish money. I went back to the, now the whole time I'm doing this, by the way, I'm keeping in touch with my family. We all kind of formed a group on WhatsApp, and so I was kind of letting them know what I was doing and where I was going and things like that as best I could. And thank God that we did create this group, because later on, it probably saved me from going into areas I shouldn't have been in. So eventually I make it back, getting all my stuff. Now I'm going to go in and fight. I did my good deed for the day. And then another family. Now my car is one of them small compacts. I'm kind of cheap, you know, so rented a small car, and it's a family of 7, and they need to get someplace. And so I'm like, no way. Now this is 7 people with each carrying a big bag. And I said, oh, we could do it, you know. I just felt so bad for these people, but we had to drive, I think it was 5 hours to get to Warsaw. The little girl, they didn't know anybody anyplace else, but the little girl had met this other girl online, and they became friends, and that little girl said, my mom says if you guys need someplace to come, you can stay with us, which I thought was awesome. So, in this case, though, the father was there. That was one of the other stipulations, or one of the other rules was, if you had, I believe it's 3 or more children, the father could opt to leave the country. And in this case, he left his unit just to get his family someplace safe, and then he intended to return. And he was so grateful, he ended up giving me his armband that they had to wear in the beginning. Because they didn't have really a set uniform. A lot of the guys were just wearing whatever camouflage, like hunting stuff. So they would wear their armbands. And to this day, they still will wear either yellow, blue, green. The Russians, I think, were wearing white and red while I was there. So I drove that family all the way up to Warsaw. By now it's, you know, 10:30, almost midnight. And started to snow. They tried to get me to stay, but I mean, the apartment was probably good enough for 3 people. Now I've got 10 people there. So I said, oh, no, I've got stuff to do. So I jumped in the car and headed back. I ended up sleeping in the car and, you know, in the snow that night. And eventually, after making some of these trips, I think the toughest thing I had to do was cross that border. I mean, literally step across and know that I'm going into a war zone, you know. I knew I was going to do it, but it was kind of, I paused and I thought, you know, about the family and everything, but I went ahead and did it. First thing I ran into was a tent on the other side in Ukraine, and it was the military, and they came running up and said, are you joining? Are you joining? And at that point, my family had said, hey, you're doing such wonderful things, giving these people's rides and stuff. Maybe that's what your calling is. Maybe that's why you're there. And instead of going and fighting, which obviously, you know, at my age, I would have slowed anybody else down, but they said, why don't you just, you know, try to help people? So I decided I'm going to tell the military guys, no, I'm going to hold off for a minute, and I'll let you guys know. And so I just started walking down the road. little did I know, it would have taken me probably a month just to get to Lviv from there. But I ended up getting to a bus stop, and you know, things were really crazy. A lot of people trying to get out. There were lines of cars that were 10 miles long, literally 10 miles long. There were people that told me they'd stayed in their cars like 2 or 3 days just to get out. They were only 10 miles from the border, and it took them that long just to get across the border. So I decided to try to hitchhike. Didn't know if they knew what this meant or not. So I took this sign off of a bus stop and wrote Lviv on it and held it up. And next thing I know, a van pulls over with a bunch of soldiers in it. And they said, you know, get on in. And they took me to Lviv, which is the far west of Ukraine. And I had been to Lviv, so I was familiar with it. And I had contacted somebody that had stayed at their house before. So I stayed there, and from there I rented another car. So now I have 2 cars, one in Ukraine, one in Lviv. And when I got to the train station there, I thought it was chaotic in Poland. It was nuts in Ukraine. There were people everywhere, just people crying, having to say goodbye to the fathers, that kind of thing. It was just really, it was heart-wrenching, and I couldn't just walk away from that. So when I got in my car, and I tried to get the biggest car I could, which wasn't very big at the time, but I would go to people, do you need a ride? Yes. So I would drive them and try to get them to the border, and then I would run into that 10-mile-long backup, and I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to stay here for 3 days. I'm not going to be doing very good, so I used my head. I told you I'd worked undercover, right? And I realized that a lot of people, especially in chaotic times like that, they don't know what the rules are either. So sometimes you kind of set your own rules. So I played a little game, and I'll show you. At night, would start driving up to this line. So it's 2 ways of traffic, but one lane is completely backed up, which means you have to go into head-on traffic in order to get to the border. And so I just did this in my window, and from a distance, it really lights up good. And so I just went around the traffic. And there were a lot of, police or cars that had lights on and stuff, and it worked for me. And I just went on around traffic, turned it off right before I got to the border, the border guards. And when I get up there, I showed them my passport and tried to tell them in English that I'm transporting these people, dropping them off and going back. And they were kind of confused, but I said, trust me, this is the way we're doing it. Okay, they let me through, and pretty soon I got to know these guys at different checkpoints that I would go to. And then I would speak to other volunteers and tell them, hey, this is what I do. And that was, I didn't run into any American or volunteers really until my second trip over there. First trip, I met a lot of Ukrainian volunteers, but there weren't a whole lot of foreigners coming in at that time. So I would just do little tricks like that. And then eventually I met up with some people from the university, helped them. They were a volunteer group, and they got me a letter from their leader of the school, which is a big deal in Ukraine, for a leader of a university to write a letter and had all the official stamps and all that, basically saying, hey, there's a good guy, he's transporting people in and out, he's a volunteer, he's got my blessing. And so I would use that letter a lot, and it would work in most areas, but then eventually I would meet up with other people and get letters from different commandants, and it's like their oblast is how they pronounce it, is like states or counties within the country. And they would always have these leaders in those areas that you wanted to know. You wanted everybody to know that they're in charge. So you always kind of seek them out, or people they knew, to try to get letters from them saying, yeah, he's good, And once you got that, you were good for that area, anyways. tell you what we're going to do. We're going to run some pictures, and then that'll help me along with some of the stories. If I continued like I am, telling it step by step, I would be here for 6 months, literally. But the pictures will kind of help me to jar my memory a little bit, and then maybe you can kind of get a visual instead of just looking at my face and understand how things were over there. And I apologize for any pictures that might be disturbing. There are a couple, but they were blurred out. But everything else I kind of went through, and I think I pretty much caught.
You'll come up in a minute.
Not a problem. My AV guy, he's in charge. Okay. So, this handsome guy on the right is me. This is one of the first families that I took, and actually, they had crossed the border on foot, and then I took them to a place. You can go ahead next.
Next, he said.
Yes, 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 yes. I know I do.
He's the AV guy, he knows. Okay, this is just one of the pictures of people leaving. You can see that this is everything that they have. They're leaving their house, their country, never been in another country, most of them, and they're carrying everything they own. Next. And you can see her little dog. I just thought that was a cute picture. But again, these people just out on their own, even with their animals. Next. This was the house that I took the one family to, where there were already 3 people living here, and then I bring in 7 more. And they actually had a feast waiting for us. So they insisted that I stop and eat, and I did eat some before I took off and found out it was snowing. Next. This is a father saying goodbye to their kid on the bus, one of the buses that was going. Next. Another family. Keep going. Okay, this interesting thing. So the 2 guys I told you about, the military guys that I said were going in same time I was, and then I decided to hold off. They ended up going to this training center with a lot of other volunteers. And I know times and stuff are kind of off for me, but it was probably within the first week or 2 after I was in Ukraine that the Russians hit that training center with a missile. And now I believe they said there was 34 killed of these volunteers from other countries, but the word on the street, it was more like 144. So I wonder all the time whether I would have been there. I know I would have been there, but would I have been one of them? That was her. The police, I told you I got to know the police real well, and I was thinking, I brought my police badge, my retirement badge, and I would use that to be able to, they weren't letting anybody into where the train station was, where I was picking up a lot of people. I mean, you'd have to park about a quarter of a mile away or so, but, you know, I got to know this guy. He ended up giving me a patch, I gave him a t-shirt, and from then on, I could go right in. Everybody wondered who I was. Okay, next. This is the letter I was telling you about I got from the university. This guy, his son was in the military. He's the one that introduced me to the volunteers from the university. And his son, when he met me, he took me to coffee. I didn't understand a thing he was saying. But he sat down and he set this big chunk of metal in front of me. And it turns out it was a piece of shrapnel that he said his son got, whether he got it hit with it or picked it up, I'm not sure. This is Luba. Luba in the middle. Luba in Ukrainian means love. She was she spoke very good English. She's one of the first Ukrainians that I really got to work with that I could understand. And she later, and is now lives in Colorado, married an American volunteer, and is very happy. But she actually lived down in the Donetsk area, one of the areas that they say is all, you know, we are all Russian, we don't want to be Ukrainians, which she says is, you know, not true. And so she was going to university when she graduated. She had met this volunteer that I had part in introducing her to, and they're now married and happy. Next. The guy in the middle, I worked with him at the Peoria Police Department. He lives now in Europe, in Austria. His wife was Austrian. And when he heard I had gone over there, and he'd asked me if I had a vest, and I said no, but you know, I know some guys that need vests. So he and his German friend on the right got some money together, and they bought a couple of vests. One was for a journalist that was basically drafted, and he was going into the Army, and his family was extremely afraid for him, and so these guys helped buy a vest for him, and then they bought me a vest to wear, you know, it's help with any issues. Oh, and we met in Slovakia, which was quite a drive. This is a family that I ended up transporting, but this is when they're saying goodbye to their dad. I think there's another picture. Okay, this family, they were actually, I drove them into Ukraine. They had already left, but their father was killed. And so they came back for the funeral. And I dropped them off, and so we were meeting there, her brother-in-law, who was also a policeman, and so I took this photo of them, and then went back to my car, was sitting in the parking lot, sending a message to my family, basically saying, hey, I made it here, I dropped them off, I'm heading to this place. When I thought I heard the sirens going off, if you haven't heard air raid sirens, your first time it can be pretty scary. I heard the sirens, I cracked the window a little bit, and then I heard this huge boom. And I looked up, and right across the street was an apartment complex, and a missile had just hit that. And so I knew that was my cue to exit. And you can see that. I'm sitting here, that's I think the first picture I took of it. Later on I had to drive through the smoke. But it was pretty devastating. Yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to drive through. So, needless to say, I want to get out of that city. Okay, here's a story. I got another call, help get some people out of, some people call it Dnipro or Dnipro. I went there, and the guy there said, hey, when you get here, because I was going to get there real late at night, you can stay the night at my place. And then we'll leave in the morning, and there was a group of people that I was going to take. And so I said, oh, okay, great, sounds good. So I get there, and his place was a shelter, probably about the size of this room. There were 80 of us staying in there, all the way from probably a 2-month-old infant to 90-year-old woman. So 80 of us, one bathroom. Not one men's and one women's, one bathroom. And and I told him I have to have a shower. I'm that kind of guy, you know, just to wake up. Oh yeah, there's a shower. Well, the shower was in a building out back, and this is looking at the shower stall, and it's just a hose, no hot water. And you know, of course, when I'm reaching for my towel, there's no towels. So I drive off with my dirty clothes, but builds character. You can go on. No, this was just a lady that I'd helped. This is Eva. And in the series, if we get through it enough, you're going to see a painting that she made and gave to me. And it's very touching. Her brother is a Special Forces member, and she was extremely worried about him. I ended up getting her out of Ukraine, took her to Warsaw, and whenever I go to Warsaw, I would see her, we'd go to dinner or something, or she would help me translating, because she spoke some English. And so this is just one of the times she took me on a tour around Warsaw, showed me the Warsaw ghettos, and then she told me she wanted to give me a present, which was a painting she made, and hopefully we'll run across that painting because it's very, very moving. As far as I know, her brother is still alive. I'm almost afraid to ask. I haven't talked to her in probably 6 months or so, but at one time when he had called her, he was actually like on some type of mission, and he was doing like a FaceTime with us, and they're going through the forest, and these guys were in places they, would have scared me to death. This guy, he calls himself the Soviet hippie. He brought a van for me because I had hooked up with another group called Transport a Sister, and they said, hey, your money could be better spent on, other things, gas and food and stuff for people, rather than, on renting a vehicle. So they said, send us some money and we'll see what we can do to get you a vehicle. So they ended up getting me a van. I called the Yellow Submarine. It was big and yellow, obviously. And he had to drive it from, he drove it there. And then he said, hey, if you get a chance, Google Soviet hippies. And there was a movie literally made about Soviet hippies back in the 70s. And so I Googled it and watched him. He was in there, kind of like their Jerry Garcia. It was a big deal, So he was one of the people, another volunteer's uncle. So great guy, and only got to spend a night with him, and that was it. A couple other volunteers. The one on the right is from the Netherlands. The other two, one in the middle is from Italy. And the one on the left, I don't know. But just the one on the right, he and another younger guy were working in Poland, had never been into Ukraine. And the younger guy kept saying, and he was 19, I think, he kept saying, I want to go in with you, I want to go in with you. And one day I said, come on, let's go. And now he was hooked. And we ended up in some really scary spots. Next. This is at an orphanage. I went to, I think, 7 different orphanages. One was for older kids, but the rest were for the real young kids. Nicest kids in the world. Just loved them. It was so sad. And the orphanage again, and then we brought them, like bags of toys and stuff like that. Next. That's just an award thing. There's the Yellow Submarine. I found out much later that the Red Cross has copyrighted the Red Cross, So whenever you see it, if it's not an official Red Cross, and somebody was saying, you can't have that on there. I said, tell them to come and take it off, That Red Cross got me through a lot of places, so it does just say humanitarian work and stuff. And then later, we put other things on the van. You can only take so much of that guy. That's my vest that the guys that got me from Austria. You might recognize some of these ladies. They are a group that does the quilting here in Green Valley. And they, on my second trip, they sent with me a bunch of quilts that I took over into Ukraine. And they were instrumental in a lot of the stories that I have. But one in particular was, if you've heard me talk about Victoria, the young girl with the cancer. And there is a picture of her in here. Might be hard to take, but some of those quotes really helped transporting her and helped to prolong her life for another 2 years. So just wanted to put the quilters in there. Okay, this is me coming home after my first trip. Sorry, I'm going to grab a drink. And I'm in the airport in Krakow. I believe it's Krakow. And obviously, I was a little tired at the time. You see the red tape on the one suitcase? Red is not a good color for tape in Ukraine. That's what the Russians wear. And when I got found with a roll of red tape in one of my bags, they questioned that a lot. So, at least inside Ukraine. Then when I showed them the pictures of the crosses on the truck, or the van, they understood. Okay, just picking up some stuff. Just showing a lot of the military vehicles over there are not military vehicles, but painted up that way. I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of just regular vehicles that they were using in the beginning. Me and another volunteer. Okay. Another family we brought some food to, and half of their building was blown up. Okay. Another family. This family was fortunate to only have a missile that didn't go through their ceiling and land next to their grandmother who was knitting on the couch. Yeah, and unfortunately they had the missile removed before I got there, so I couldn't get a picture of it. And they love their quotes. That's my hair. Oh, there's Grandma. So right above her, there would be a big hole in the roof. I did take a picture of it, but I don't know if it's included in this or not. Okay, almost every billboard, and you'll see some of them in here, has some reference to the war. It was, I don't know if any of you lived through World War II or not, but you know how that everything in the country was all built up and geared towards the military. That's how it is in Ukraine. Oh, well, one of the things that the children would do in the schools that I went to was they would make either they call them trench candles, which is using cardboard, wax, and cans, like short cans, and they would make these trench candles for the soldiers, not only to see at night and stuff inside their trenches, but to actually heat the trench. And I thought it was really neat. I do have a picture in here someplace of one of the candles I'll show you. But the other thing that the kids were doing was they were building camouflage netting that would go over the tanks or whatever. And then another thing was they were making Molotov cocktails with their parents. So if you don't know what that is, it's a glass bottle filled with gasoline with a rag in it. But they perfected it, and the kids would grind the styrofoam to put in it so that when it hit a tank, it would actually stick to the tank. And in the beginning, they used those a lot. And every checkpoint I would go through, as you look back, you would see boxes and boxes of those Molotov cocktails just stacked up. So, this was a place, it was like a little hotel, and there were Ukrainian officers were staying there when it was hit. This little guy on the right, his name is Maxime, and he's mentally challenged. He was staying with one of the other volunteers that I got to work with a lot, Victor, and I still work with Victor. And Maxime still gets a hold of me on Facebook all the time, and pretty much just says, "Hi, how are you?" But he's a really good guy. I like him. He's a good kid. Okay. Keep going. Another apartment. This is Victor here. Victor is my hero. Victor, since day one, has been running food, and he would go as far as he could go. He even went beyond where the military said, we're not responsible, whatever happens to you. And he took me to some of those places. But he actually had 2 of his vehicles damaged. One, while he was in it, was totally damaged by an RPG, a rocket repellent grenade, and had to get another vehicle. That vehicle was later damaged by a missile that hit by his apartment. He wasn't in it at that time. But this guy just keeps on going and going and going, and just an awesome, awesome guy. And you would think, okay, he's military age, why isn't he in the military? But he has asthma and something else that prevents him from going in the military. So he technically could leave the country, but he won't. And I'm sure that he has been in just as dangerous a spots as soldiers, any of the soldiers. Good guy. That's one of his vehicles. You keep going. And that's him again. This is one of the families who brought a generator to. That's one of the things in Ukraine while I was there was you never knew if you were going to have electricity or water. There were many times that I didn't. I was pretty fortunate though that a lot of times I did. But there were many families like this. They lived right across the river from in Zaporizhia from where the Russians were. So the Russians were constantly sending shells over their houses and stuff. And sometimes they would land short in their neighborhood. But they had no electricity. So we brought them a generator, and you can go on. And in turn, this young lady painted me this picture and gave it. Like I said, they were the hardest people in the world to give things to for free. They always wanted, they're very proud, they want to work for what they get, or if you give them something, they want to give you something in return. And so I ended up with 3 different paintings, from people, and socks. The guy I got the best for, the journalist, socks are coveted over there in the military. And so he gave me some military socks that actually say, Army and Ukrainian on them. And I insisted, no, keep them, but people told me to take it because that's just their tradition, I guess. Same family. Now hangs in my room. Okay, this is like this lady takes in kids, so it's not a family. They're like foster home, but bigger. I mean, there's even more kids. Okay, so we were dropping food and things off, and that's them saying goodbye as we're driving. You can go. Go ahead. Okay, another family who took a generator too. It's kind of strange in the beginning when I first got there. You were getting different things to transport around, and generators were all the rave in the winter, of course. So I took a lot of generators to places. This is all food from those ladies. Actually helped out some animal places too. I never, when I got there, I did not want to hook up with any one group in particular because they had rules, and I didn't want to follow rules. I wanted to be that guy that if something bad was happening, could go there without having to check in with anybody, just do it. Because there were many of these groups where they were told, no, you can't go there, you can't do this, you can't do that, we're liable, that kind of thing. And in the meantime, there's people who are seriously injured or in need who are having to wait because of this red tape. And I wanted to be that guy that they could call because they knew I had no red tape, and I would just go do it. And so I worked with a lot of different organizations. This is one of the first times that I got extremely close to the front, and Victor obviously took me, Victor and Olga, and we were going to a group of, they call them pensioners, which are retired people, who had no place to go, didn't want to leave their homes, and started living underground in these basements. And they had an engineer, and he was building this thing to heat them and everything. So there was, at the time, there were 6 very, older people living underground, and we were taking them food and stuff. And right after this picture's taken, in this field out here, artillery was falling. And then I saw like these missiles taking off. So, and then you'll see some of the other stuff we saw. Go ahead. This is Olga on the left. She was also a volunteer with Victor's group, but she also was investigating war crimes. So she was documenting any time there were, like, for instance, missiles that were not allowed by Geneva Convention, like cluster bombs and stuff like that. And she was documenting those kind of things. Her husband was also in the military, and we ended up going to the front lines to take his group a generator and some other stuff. And as we were going there, they were retreating from the Russians because they were being attacked. So we ended up meeting up with them in a church, and we were very, very close. This cat, there was an elderly guy didn't want to leave his house, and so we brought him some food, and his cat jumped up on the fence, and I became really good friends with the cat because I didn't understand what they were talking about. And after we left the food, we headed down the road. About 30 minutes later, he calls, and he said, "Are you guys okay?" And Victor's like, "Yeah." And he said, it's, right after you left, like 20 minutes after you left, a missile hit, ended up killing the cat. That's my understanding. But that's when we first became aware of drones. I mean, I knew that there was a young kid and his father went out and were flying drones in the very beginning to help the Ukrainians spot the Russians to put artillery on them. But that was all I knew about any drones being up. But then around when we started getting in close, then we started learning that they were using drones. So were the Ukrainians. Now at this point, when this happened, the drones didn't have bombs on them. They were just using them for spotting, and that's probably why it took them 20 minutes to, hit the place after we'd left. But then we, of course, found out they were targeting volunteers, especially foreign volunteers. I mean, if you could capture an American or kill an American, that was a big deal. So, and of course, we're hearing this through the grapevine. Later on is when they started, using the drones with the bombs on them and stuff like that. So, you can keep going. This is one of the pictures going in closer. We actually went through what they called their last line. Basically, the soldiers were there to let people know that, hey, anything beyond this, there could be Russians. But we ended up going through there to get to this next place. But on the way, there was artillery coming in and hitting, so I was just getting some pictures of that. Okay. I don't know why there's no sound, but...
Because we're not connected to the sound system.
Exactly. Yes, I didn't want the sound. No, I'm joking. Okay, I'll tell you what the sound is. We stopped at a gas station, and there's some pictures of it. But you can hear the machine gun fire and then some artillery. And right over to the right-hand side there is where we're headed, where that smoke is. And that the shell that just hit there. There next to it. Now, you can keep going. This is the gas station that we stopped at. And it was evident that there was a gunmetal there. This is a piece of shrapnel. I always thought the shrapnel was little pieces. For some reason in my mind, I'm thinking, tiny pieces. This is the kind of stuff that comes out, and it's jagged and extremely heavy. And just, I just thought it was so unbelievable. Okay. No gas. And that's where a shell hit. This was a propane tank, and we were kind of laughing because it says fire danger. And we were joking that the Russians couldn't read Ukrainian. Okay. This is getting into that little town where the people are living underground. You can keep going. Too bad we don't have noise, or volume. What happens here is, as we're driving along, and I'm letting Victor drive, and we're in an English car, by the way, in this one, where the steering wheel's on the other side. And so I'm leaning out the window taking video, and an artillery shell hit right behind us. I mean, now obviously not right behind us, because I wouldn't be here, but close enough to where I screamed, like, you know, a little higher than normal. And then I tried to fake it, play it off, like, oh, I hit my arm or something, you know, but like I wasn't afraid because they didn't jump. But it was, to describe an artillery shell going off anywhere close to you, you feel it in your bones. And that's not where you're in danger. I mean, just, it's the craziest feeling in the world. But, okay, next. This, soldiers were being housed in this. It was a school, and we're not sure if they were in there when it got hit. Okay. All right. And these are all getting down towards, closer to the front lines in the southeast area. This is the engineer, and so he's taking care of all these people down in the basement. And you can go on the next one. That's going down into the basement area. And this video goes through, I'll just wait until we turn the corner and show, otherwise it goes on for a few minutes. But it kind of shows his whole setup, how, you know, they're underground about 10 feet or so, and he uses these different things to heat it. And we brought him a generator. And he recycles his water, so they'll wash their hands there, then it goes down in, recycles, goes back up. And then we just kind of walk around this whole area, and he shows us all these really interesting things that he's done to stay, you know, to help these people that don't want to leave. And so we were just bringing them food and a generator and some other stuff. This is just him showing us the heating system he set up. And you can see he looks a little worn out. This is going through that same little town. And that's the name of it. I can't pronounce half of the towns. I mean, I would butcher them. I know that this town has been taken since. I mean, it was already in dispute on who had it at the time, but it's been taken.
So what about the people that are living in the basement?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay. This is one of the bigger ones that hit. This doesn't give it justice. This hole is about at least 8 foot deep. If I would have tried to walk down into that hole, there's no way I'd ever be able to get out of it. It just, it's so huge. And the mud, some of you historians may have heard about the mud, how the Russian mud stopped the Germans in World War II. Oh, yeah, this mud will stick and keep on sticking. Big, that's just one shell that hit there and blew that. Some of the shrapnel. I was going to share with somebody else, but they left, so this is all I ate by myself. Tank traps, these are, you know, homemade tank traps, and they basically are supposed to stop a tank or an armored vehicle or something. They had those at every checkpoint. These things were like just everywhere, everywhere. You just got used to them. Lady I gave a ride to. I'll talk a little bit about some of the roads. They have the worst road system in the world, at least that I've seen. The potholes or craters, I call them, just horrible on 90% of the roads. There were some freeways that were good. However, those freeways were the ones where the Russians blew out the bridge. So one night I'm driving, remember you're supposed to, everybody's darked out, so there's no lights on or anything, except the car. I'm driving along and the next thing I know, that bridge is gone. There's nobody there, you know, like in the United States, we expect there to be signs, hey, bridge out, or no, it happens, that was it. Sometimes people would get out of their cars, and I have a picture of one of them where they would like take a tire or something, lay it out there, put a little board that says, you know, bridge is out or something, but in this case, it didn't, and I don't know how, but my reflexes, I was able to shift into the other lane and go across the one lane that was left on the bridge. Another bridge I had crossed, came back half hour later, and it was gone. So it's crazy. Another lady had stopped me, asked me if I was going to the front, and I said yes, and she said, please take this to the soldiers. So she gave me some food to take out there. Another person just delivered to. I always try to, because some of the donations would come from certain places, so people that had me transport them would say, hey, can you send a picture just showing that, you know, their stuff got there? And, because, you know, people would like to know that their stuff didn't just disappear, you know, or their money or whatever. So I would try to always take pictures. These two guys were on their way to work, and I just happened to be going down the road and picked them up. We had a great conversation, but they didn't speak any English. Just picture just to kind of show you what it's like in some of the small villages and stuff. I think this is the lady that had 100 dogs. Because not only are people get displaced, but when they leave, they're not taking their animals with them. A lot of animals over there. This lady probably had over 100 dogs. There's another lady in here that had 100 cats. And of course we would get the request for food for them, and I would volunteer and take it out there. Just kind of showing this area how big, just dogs everywhere. This was a bus full of Ukrainian soldiers on their way to the front, and didn't make it. And this was typical driving down the road, all over the place. A lot of these are military vehicles, or not military vehicles, but vehicles used by the military. But a lot of more civilian vehicles too. You keep going. I think a lot of these are just pictures. Yeah. I used to think, when I was in the military, I used to think the safest place would be inside of a tank, with all the armor and everything. But after being in Ukraine, I can tell you, I would never want to be in a tank. Because I saw them just torn apart like oh, you go on. They'd just be torn open like a can. Yeah, it's sad just to think that, every one of these pictures you see is, somebody's most traumatic day of their life, The other thing you have to worry about out there are mines. You were thankful that there were, little signs up saying there were mines, but there were many places where there were no signs. And you had to be very careful. I remember seeing on TV them telling you not to go in a certain area because of mines that weren't marked. Just one of the town names. A lot of the buildings were the old Soviet style, where they don't put a lot of flair into their apartment buildings, The only thing you would ever see is there's always this one section that has like a mosaic of tile, kind of cool. But their apartment buildings are very plain Jane. Another generator.
Where are you getting all these generators?
Oh, I just pick them up. They fall off the back of a truck. No. There were, people donating money, and wherever the money would go. Now, it wasn't all from me. I would transport for other groups. So these groups would call me up and say, hey, or we got onto a group text. Is there anybody in this area that can pick up something and take it to here? I probably went from one side of Ukraine to the other, seems like 100 times, easy. Just, and it's a couple day drive or so. But I would pick up things different places. They would have different places to drop it off. I would just load what I could.
Where are they getting the fuel to?
Yeah, that's what
For-
my.
I pay for my own fuel.
Where are you getting it?
They were-
Where am I getting?
The fuel for the generators.
Oh,
But even-
there are some gas stations open. Now, there was a point when I was there, I drove by 33 gas stations that did not have gas and got down to where fumes, and it was so strange, I'm waiting in one line, and I didn't even know if they had the kind of fuel I needed, which is diesel, and some Ukrainian guy pulls up and just started speaking to me in English, so I must have looked like an American. And he said, you're not going to be able to get any, but if you follow me, I'll help you out. He took me to his house and gave me 15 gallons of diesel, because once they found out you were a volunteer, they wanted to do whatever they could. They said, you're helping my country, you're here, we want to help you, but I still paid him, He didn't want to take the money, but his wife was happy to take it, so. And then there was the black market. I had a phone number that I got from my friend Luba. If you run out of gas, call this number. These guys will show up, pop their trunk, fill you up with fuel. Of course, it's going to cost twice as much as it normally would, which, entrepreneurs, I'm okay with that. And I had to do that once. This is that sign I was telling you about where the bridge was out. Somebody just handwritten, saying, bridge is out. And they used the tire in like part of a tank that was blown up right there to hold it there. There's the tank. So, and of course, GPS maps doesn't know that the bridge just got blown up, so now I've got to try to figure my way around without running across the Russian. Okay. The girl on the right, she's from Lithuania. She's the one that was her uncle that brought me the van. She's also a volunteer. And I would get information from her, places to go, things to do to help people many times, and we never got to see each other until finally we met in Kyiv. And then that's her boyfriend behind me. And she was doing another run. Just one of the murals a lot of murals on the buildings in Ukraine. That was just transferring stuff from one vehicle to another. The stuff that we would pick up, whether it's food, dog food, whatever it would be, we would go to people's private homes because they would get it brought in to their home, they would store it, and then we would pick it up. And I don't know who did all the coordinating on it. It was just all grassroots. There was no organization as far as, like a legit organization necessarily. They were all non-government or NGOs that were doing it, or just people. This is Nick. He and his family lived in Kyiv, and when the war first started, they were hiding in like a basement area that was below a gas station because that had Wi-Fi when they first got there, but they ended up down in this basement, and they stayed down in there for 4 days with no food, no water, or nothing, before they were able to get out and get away from where the Russians were. And the reason I know him, he called me while he was down there. I was still in the United States. This is when it first started. And he said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was your Uber driver when you were here on vacation. He says, and he and told me their situation, and I said, it's ironic you called, I just booked my plane, I'm on my way. So I ended up sending him some money, and we kept in touch, and he's helped me with translating and stuff. Really good guy.
And how were you able to send him money? You said you sent him money from America?
Yeah, they, PayPal, I think it was, basically allowed any money going into Ukraine to private people to go in for free. They weren't charging anything. There are some other apps, I guess, but in his case, it was PayPal. And yeah, it took a while to figure it all out, you know, because I wasn't real savvy with that. Now I'm very savvy. So I still, to this day, I send money in whenever I can. An example of one of the roads.
North Dakota.
Oh, this is the nice road, okay? This is right near Victor's house, one of the apartment blocks that got hit. And this is another thing, we were dropping off candles to people. Go ahead. Okay. This on the left is their stove in most, like the villages on the outside. Now, you get into Kyiv and Lviv, places like that, you know, they're more modern. But when you get out into the country, you know, the farmers, stuff like that, this is how they cook and heat the house. And a lot of times they burn pellets. And in fact, a group from down here sent me some money to get pellets to get to these people to keep their house warm. We're just handing out drinks and stuff to the kids. Again, they were right across the river from where the Russians were, so they were in danger. Some of the roads we had to go down. It's crazy. Okay. This is one of the hospitals. We got a call one night that there was a guy who had lost his legs. He was in a hospital in an area that was highly contested, and no ambulance service would go in there. Nobody. They couldn't find anybody to go in to get this guy because he had to get to a major hospital further west. And so they called us up in the middle of the night and said, "Hey, we understand that you say no, but they really want this guy out of there. Can you guys do it?" And Victor and I said, "Yeah, why not? We go through there all the time." So we did. We ended up picking up this guy, and just so happens, in order to make space for the guy, we had to get rid of these adult diapers that we had in the back of our van, and they needed them. So she was happy to take our adult diapers, so we had room to transport this guy. And there he is. Now, that's kind of a joke. I'm taking a picture of the tower. Towers, like radio towers or that kind of tower, was a big target for the Russians. In fact, there was one tower that they had shot 3 missiles at over a period of a couple of months, and they kept missing it, but they kept hitting apartment buildings. So that's just at the hospital loading that guy up.
Is that an ice cream bar you were eating?
Yes, it was. Thank you. Yeah. Is this not the biggest dog you've ever seen? They had 2 of these, and that's Victor. And Victor's a very big guy. And all their dogs have passports.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just shop books or what, but pet passport. So. This is the guy, if you heard me speak before, that gave me the shirt off his back. Literally, the shirt he's wearing on the left, the camo shirt, I have hanging in my closet now. But you'll notice his pants are British camouflage. His upper is a new Ukrainian camouflage. And he was like a park ranger for an area in Zaporizhia. It's like a little island in the middle of the river. And he gave us a tour of everything, but as we're walking through there, you can just hear explosions going off everywhere. Nicest guy, but I said, wow, that's probably the greenest camouflage I've ever seen. You know, I mean, is that new? And you like it? Took it off and gave it to him. That's just a painting on his wall. This guy was a policeman. You can see his British camouflage too. And that's what the guy changed into after he gave me his shirt. And that's a quote, I guess, from a famous poet or something. This is like one of their traditional houses, like from years back. And you can see the roof is made of the sticks or the straw. This is a bridge in Dnipro. The Russians were always trying to hit that bridge. Just keep going. Just one of the buildings. Hey, I didn't write my name there. Just happened to be there.
Really?
I don't believe it.
Smart.
Same message.
This is one of the candles I was talking about that the kids would make. They would take the cardboard, cut it so it's the same, height as a can, and they would roll it up in there, put a wick in the middle, and then pour wax in there. And believe it or not, they would give off a lot of heat. And when you're out in those trenches where those guys were, anything, it doesn't put off a lot of smoke. That's Maxime again. We had the lights were out, so the candles going. And then I finally was given a tourniquet. Somebody handed it to me and said, hey, I think you might need this. No thanks. I gave it to a soldier later. This is some of the buildings, I think, in Lviv. In this video, and you can probably pass on, but I'm showing all the generators, all the electricity's out in the city. And as I'm walking, it's like 50 generators and all these stores going off, and then people just walking around like it's no big deal. And the sirens going. But that is in Lviv, so they're in the west, so a little safer. This is one of the memorials, and it's from World War II, but it's made up of all gun parts and bombs and things. Some of their churches. I actually made deliveries to churches too. So there was their I don't know what they call them, priests or what, but there was one that had his robe and everything, but it was all camouflage, and ended up delivering stuff to him. One of the roads, this was kind of more of a joke, because she gave me an address, and that was at Thor Hall. Gave me an address, and up here the GPS says take a left, and I'm looking at a field, and I said, I'm not going here. I ended up finding the place, but this road, this is not like a one-time deal. This was every day, and I lost 2 tires hitting these potholes where it would just blow the tire out. And that's where I was headed. This guy on the right, this one on the right, he went to school in West Virginia, actually. So pretty good English. And this is one of the kids that we brought some stuff to. And that's him showing me his hometown and told me about when they got hit. And it was a few weeks before I got there. One of the saddest moments I had was driving through a town like this, and I saw all these people, in their 70s, 80s, 90s, out in the street with brooms and just their hands, and just cleaning up where people's houses had been blown up. And it was kind of like they just all working together, but it was just everybody was nobody was under the age of 70 something, you know, because they were all off fighting. I did eat pretty good. Dog I found on the road. Dogs everywhere, everywhere, except this one I almost ran into. You'll see when it starts to walk, it's already been hit. And so I was giving him a lecture about staying out of the road, and then he won't get his other legs messed up. And I kept feeding him. I had to go on, but I called somebody else to check to see if because he was living behind this bus stop, but they never found him. So. But I mean, thousands and thousands of dogs everywhere. That was in Odessa, I think. Oh, okay. Go on. Yeah, this one's what a story. This is a lady with 100 cats, and she built this intricate place, and she wanted me to go through it with her, and it's all blankets and wood, and you know, this the biggest fire hazard. And the only thing I could say to her was, I hope none of the cats are smoking. You know, it was. Yeah. But she put her heart into it, and you know, I gave her what I could, and then left, brought her a bunch of food and stuff. This is only the 20 that were living in her house. The other 100 were out inside, and this other thing she built. And she had a dog. Just one of the bridges I had to cross, it was iffy. I was just showing how the roads are. Oh, and then I thought the most delicate thing in the world, surviving in a war zone, a snowflake. Yeah, just showing the snow and stuff, I think. Without the sound, it really isn't going to do you a lot of good, probably. Wheelchairs, brought a lot of wheelchairs around. And these places that we would bring things to, and sometimes we took them directly to the families, other times we brought them to like organizations or churches. There are thousands and thousands of these around, and everybody took on the effort of doing stuff for each other. And you can see my tape on my vehicle. All right, this is in Poland. That was the place I was helping out with the animals too. And they're loading a huge generator into my vehicle. This vehicle didn't have a third gear. Probably broke down 4 or 5 times. It was horrible, but it did the job. Yeah, you keep going, I think. It's just showing different places. People I brought things. She was a veterinarian. She needed a generator. Another street sign. And you can just kind of keep popping through some of these. They are actually pretty creative too. I mean, as far as some of the street signs, I mean, I can't repeat some of the language they used on them in their language. You know, I would ask them all the time when people, the Ukrainians I was taking, I would say, "What does that sign say?" Well, you don't want to know. You know, not nice things. All geared towards Putin, you know, and stuff like that. Most of the Ukrainians I met, or a good percentage of them, had relatives in Russia. And especially in the beginning, had no hard feelings for Russia, but developed them against Putin, you know. Later on, though, kind of changed a bit.
Pat, the question is, what now?
Yeah, I was waiting to ask that, yes.
What now?
What now that the crook in chief is now president? What now? Tell me, what do you think is going on?
No, Biden left. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Good question, what now? I could tell you my gut feeling, but I try to stay out of the politics because, I mean, that can go a million different ways, but I think, I don't think Trump's ego will allow him to lose, in a sense, you know. I don't think he wants to. I think that he will continue to help.
You do?
He said he's not gonna do that.
He
He
said
is
that up
very
until,
truthful. When it
up
comes
until
to
yesterday.
not doing good things, he's
And
very
calm down,
truthful.
Ed, calm
We're
down.
here to hear his experience.
Not politics.
No politics.
Yeah, that's politics.
Come on.
Maybe we can just open it up to a few non-political.
yeah, if you want to, and you can just keep going through the pictures. If I see something,
I have a question about cell phone communication.
oh, yeah, and that could lead off into another long answer. But while I was over there, actually, I was using my GPS as best I could when I would have service. And the Russians actually started jamming them. And I took what should have been a 7-hour trip that lasted 14 hours one time.
But I was thinking about communication with people, you have to call somebody to find out.
Some areas you had service, some you didn't. You know, obviously the news is kind of, you know, they only show the war zone, so you think the whole country's all blown up, and it's not. It's not. But I think the whole country could be in danger, you know, because it could be reached. But the majority of that is more south and east. But there is, you know, it was hit and miss.
I can go back.
It's my intention to go back. It's just money, financial right now. So, but I will go back, no doubt.
What's the biggest need that there is that something like this group can do? What's the most important thing that we can do?
You know, it's been a while since I've been back, so I don't know what their biggest need is right now. No, there's the picture. So, yeah, I couldn't answer that.
What about medical supplies?
Things would change. Oh, we were getting a lot of that, but a lot of that too, though, they were rejecting if it was, you know, if it was out of date. There were some people, we knew that there were some groups that would take it, they didn't care what the date was on it. But other group, you know, they had to be careful.
So a lot of those medical supplies, they are good past their expiration date. And I know when I used to go to Sierra Leone in the beginning, they would accept anything, and then they got more rigid about it and wanted it to be the good dates.
And
But
that's because the lawyers got involved
That's right.
and that kind of thing, and no liability. That's why I didn't want to go with the group, because I'll tell you, the people that I talk to in the front,
yeah,
I'll take anything. I don't care what the date is. I don't care what it looks like. Or, you know, they would tell me what they wanted, and they took it. They didn't care.
right.
It was just the bureaucrats.
Do you have a date as far as, you know, getting there back there? I mean, are you looking at 6 months?
I would go tomorrow if I could, but I don't know. And things are kind of up in the air because, you know, for a while people were wondering, is it going to, you know, end? And if it does, I want to go over and help do some rebuilding, but I couldn't give an exact date. I was hoping I'd be back there by now. This is one of the unit patches a guy gave me that I brought some stuff to them.
This temple supports the Project Linus, which is the quilt making on a mitzvah day. But we would really like to have some other ideas about you know, how we can get together with our sister congregations, churches, and whatever, because Green Valley is, you know, is a very ecumenical place as far as social action.
Yeah,
So we would really like to have some ideas. If you think of it later, you can.
Yeah.
if I do, I'll pass it on
Sure.
to Dan, and maybe Dan can pass it on. But my thing that I ran into was that I could have went over there with tons of clothing or something, but just the price of shipping things that far, you could have taken that money and bought new clothing.
How open is the border between Poland and Ukraine? Is Is that, you know, things flow pretty well now?
Um,
As opposed to,
Yeah, they had it down pretty good. I mean, even then though, they were checking everything. It wasn't, they didn't, in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, it's a war, open the gates, let them go in. No, they were still, that's why the big long line, they were checking everybody. They were, you know.
now, but it's better now.
But now, yeah. Oh, yeah, much better.
So there's good cooperation between the two countries, I think.
Yeah, there is, but they're not gonna cut any corners.
No.
Everybody's still getting checked, and the only reason it's probably running smoother now is because there's less people, you know,
Right.
coming through.
But any other countries that are, their borders are working better with Ukraine or?
I'm sure Pat will be around for a little while for private, you know, one-on-one discussions. Should I get in front of the camera, Les? It's in the dark, so you'll. Anyway, I certainly want to thank you for coming, and this is going to.
I appreciate it. I can probably write it down.
Captivate the audience. I do want to mention a couple of other things. We have some other programs coming up. In February, we're going to have the walk through our. Thank you.
Have the walk through our labyrinth with a flute player who provides therapeutic flute along with the walk. And then we're going to have another speaker on a Sunday in February to talk about the topic of AI. And I also want to point out that we have some pieces of artwork in the lobby that are on easels. These are from our collection of items that we had at the gala that we still have. And if you'd like to support the temple, you can take a look at those and know that we'll be bringing some more in. So I certainly want to thank Ken again, and I want to...
Can I also say?
Yes.
We asked people as they came in to make some donations for camp, but now that you've seen some of what's needed, feel free to donate on your way out again.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Les and Bev, for helping out. Appreciate it. And Josh was our show mayor, and Esther was our greeter today. And thank you all for coming.
I guess I'll give you the drop then. Joyce, you want to get a picture?
Ed, stop it. Ed, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the real life, you know, you're not listening, you're watching a movie.
I'm going to turn off the sound system.
Thank you. Ukrainian duo.
Oh, that's very nice. Did you want in there? Dad, you get in the middle. There you go. Here's
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh, you want in here too? I'm good.
More the merrier.
Your fingers up in the, there you go.
Be careful what you say. One more? Oh, my God.
How about you, Joyce?
Yeah. You want to get your brother in here too? Oh no, crack the camera. Yeah, I know.
Does he ever have